Last week I left you with the thought in mind that all possession is a result of your accumulative attitude of your mind or your money consciousness. This is the magic wand which will enable you to receive the idea, and it'll formulate plans for you to execute, and you'll find as much pleasure in the execution as in the satisfaction of attainment and achievement. So I had asked you to go to your private closet place where you have been doing your meditation and getting control of your body and mind and spirit. And I ask you to create a mental picture that had pleasant associations with it. I wanted you to see the buildings, the grounds, the trees, friends, associations, everything complete. And I had told you at first that you would find yourself thinking of everything under the sun, except the ideal upon which you desired to concentrate. But I also told you don't let it discourage you, because the more you tried, the easier it would get. And that each day, if you practiced the different exercises I've given you to this point, then practice makes perfect. So tonight, I left you with some questions, and I'm going to run across them, and I'm going to give you the answers. I asked, what proportion of our mental life is subconscious? And the answer to that question was at least 90%. I also asked you, is this vast mental storehouse generally utilized, meaning the subconscious mind? And the answer to that was, in general, no. I asked you also, why not? The answer was that few understand and appreciate the fact that it is an activity which they may consciously direct. I asked, where has the conscious mind received its governing tendencies? The proper answer to that was from heredity, which means that it is the result of all the environments of all of your past generations. We discussed that within 32 generations, there was over 10 million people in your background. I then went on to ask you, what is the law of attraction bringing to us? And the truthful answer of that is our own. And our own is that we inherently are, and is the result of our past thinking, both conscious and subconscious. I asked, of what is the material with which we construct our mental home composed? And the natural answer to that is very simple: the thoughts we entertain. I asked, what is the secret of power? And the true answer to that is a recognition of the omnipresence of omnipotence. Where does it originate? Well, the answer was simple. All life and all power is from within, as we know. I also finalized that with, upon what is the possession of power contingent? And the answer to that question was, upon a proper use of the power already in our possession. Tonight I'm proud to bring you lesson 6 of the Winner Inside Releasing the Invincible You Mastery course, the master key to all of life's how would I want to say that? All of life's strengths, health, prosperity, success, all of life's journey into the palm of your hand. So tonight, as I begin lesson 6, I hope that this will give you an excellent understanding of the most wonderful piece of mechanism which has ever been created. This mechanism may be used to create yourself health, strength, success, prosperity, or any other condition which you desire. You know, necessities are demands. And demands create what? Action. And actions always bring about results. So the process of evolution is constantly building our tomorrows out of our todays. Individual development, like universal development, must be gradual with an ever-increasing capacity and volume. The knowledge that if we infringe upon the rights of others, we become moral thorns and find ourselves entangled at every turn of the road, should be an indication that success is contingent upon the highest moral ideal, which is the greatest good to the greatest number. You know, aspiration, desire, and harmonious relations constantly and persistently maintained will accomplish results. The greatest hindrance to that is our erroneous and fixed ideals. To be in tune with what I call the eternal truth, we must possess poise and harmony within. In order to receive intelligence, the receiver must be in tune with the transmitter, just like two radios that speak to each other in the night. You know, thought is a product of mind, and as we know, mind is created. But this doesn't mean that the universal will change the way it operates to suit us or our ideas. But it does mean that we can come into a harmonious relationship with the universe. And when we have accomplished this, we may ask anything to which we are entitled, and the way will be made plain for us to obtain it. You know, the universal mind is so wonderful that it is difficult to understand its utilitarian powers and possibilities and its unlimited producing effects. We've found that this mind is not only an intelligence, but all substance. So we ask then, how is it to be that we can differentiate it in form? How are we to secure the effect which we desire? Well, let me say to you, let me use couple little scenarios. If you were to ask any electrician what the effect of electricity will be, I'm sure he would reply that electricity is a form of motion, and its effect will depend upon the mechanism to which it's attached. Upon that mechanism will depend whether we shall have heat, light, power, music, or any of the other marvelous demonstrations of power to which the vital energy has been harnessed. But I want to share something with you tonight, if you'll give me just 1 second as I step away from the camera. I want to teach you by example through this little lamp that I'm going to put before you. You see, I found this dolphin in a shop, and I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but I'm going to hold it up. What I have in this dolphin is electrical charges that are racing to the surface, and they're running within the perimeter of this dolphin. Now, if you'll notice, I can touch it, and the charges are still moving forward. But I can choke it and pull those charges to the base. Yet the power is still evident, as you see the white, that's the electricity flowing. So the electricity is flowing somewheres. When freed, we see that it is all powerful and gone again. So what happens in our lives is we gradually allow them to pull our light into a narrow way. My hope and goal with this example is for you to understand that the light is still there. And the more we learn about ourselves and the universal mind, the more power that comes into our life. If you think about that, all of our life, we've been told what to do, what to think, how to act, and what was good and bad till they formed our opinions and our ideals. If you look at that clearly, you see. Now, as we enlighten ourselves, as I taught you in the earlier lessons, we see that it starts to charge our life. And as we release ourselves into the flow of the universal mind, we begin to see that we are an illuminated force of energy, a mass, if you would, yet we are in touch with it. We can touch it, but who shapes it? We do. We can choose to choke out our energy, or we can choose to let it shine. You know, let us think about that for a moment. I ran across that example and I thought it was something that I could share to show how life's forces and energies are ever there before us, and that as the electricity is a form of motion, its effect depends upon the mechanism to which it's attached. Well, as the spirit is a form of energy, as we are a form of energy, and that omnipotent universal spirit within us is a massive form of energy, maybe it comes into spectrum what it really means to let your light shine. You know, think about this. What effect can be produced by thought? The reply is that thought is your mind in motion. Just as, wind is air in motion. Its effect will depend entirely on the mechanism to which it is attached. So what I'm about to reveal to you is the secret of all mental power. It depends on the mechanism which we attach. What's that mechanism, you ask? Well, you know something of it, which has been invented by people like Edison and Bell and Marconi and other electrical wizards, by which place and space and time have become only figures of speech for all of us in this generation. Because of the internet, we interrelate internationally around the world in an instant. But did you ever stop to think that the mechanism which has been given you for transforming the universal omnipresent potential power was invented by a greater inventor than even Edison? That power within you was given to you by your creator, a greater omnipresent potential power than even the greatest invention of all mankind. You know, all throughout our life, we're accustomed to examining the mechanisms of like the implements which we use for like plowing ground, or we try to get an understanding of how our automobiles work, which we drive. But most of us are content to remain in absolute ignorance of the greatest piece of mechanism which has ever come into existence. And that is the brain of man, of us, our brain. Let us examine for a minute, if you would, the wonders of this mechanism. Maybe by that we can get a better understanding of the various effects of which it is the cause. You know, in the first place, there's this great mental world in which we live and move and have our being. You know, the world is omnipotent, it's omniscient, it's omnipresent. It will respond to our desire in direct ratio to our purpose and faith. You know, the purpose must be in accordance with the law of our being. And that is to say, it must be creative or constructive. And then our faith must be strong enough to generate a current of sufficient strength to bring about our purpose. Thus the saying, as thy faith is, so be it unto you. Now, you know, that bears the stamp of a scientific test. You know, the effects which are produced in the world without are the result of the action and reaction of the individual upon the universal. That is a process which we call thinking. The brain is the organ through which this process is accomplished. Think of the wonder of it all. Do you love music, flowers, good books, literature? Are you inspired by the thought of ancient or modern genius? Remember, every beauty to which you respond must have its corresponding outline where? In your brain, before you can appreciate it. There's not a single virtue or principle in in the whole storehouse, if you would, of nature, which the brain cannot express. The brain, I heard it said, is an embryonic world ready to develop at any time as necessity may arise. So if you can comprehend that this is a scientific truth and one of the wonderful laws of nature, it'll be easier for you to get an understanding of the mechanism by which all of these extraordinary results I'm speaking of are being accomplished. I'm going to be a little medical for a moment and kind of walk you through a few things. You know, our nervous system has been compared to an electric circuit with its battery of cells in which force is originated. And and it's white matter to insulated wires by which the current is conveyed, if you would. And it's through these channels that every impulse or desire is carried throughout the mechanism and the brain. The brain. You know, our spinal cord is a great motor and sensory pathway by which messages are conveyed to and from the brain. There's the blood supply plunging through the veins and arteries that renews our energy and strength. And the perfectly arranged structure upon which the entire physical body rests, and finally, the delicate and beautiful skin that clothes the entire mechanism, is a mantle of beauty, if you would. This then, as we've read in the Word, is why they say we are a temple of a living God. And the individual I is given control. You are given control. I am what I am now becoming. So the individual I is given control, and upon his understanding of the brain, which is within his control, is what the result will depend upon. You know, every thought sets the brain cells into action. At first, the substance upon which the thought is directed fails to respond. But if the thought is sufficiently refined and concentrated, so to speak, laser focused, then the substance will finally yield and it expresses itself perfectly. This influence of the mind can be exerted upon any part of the body, causing the elimination of any undesirable effect. Could it be that that's the mystery of healing? That the influence of the mind, laser focused in faith, can be exerted upon any part of the body, causing the elimination of any undesirable effect? Think of that, if you will. You know, a perfect conception and understanding of the laws governing in the mental world cannot fail to be of an inestimable value in the transaction of our business on a daily basis. As it develops the power of discernment and gives us a clear understanding, it also gives us an appreciation of facts. You show me a man who looks within instead of without, and I'll show you a man that cannot fail to make use of the mighty forces which will eventually determine his course in life, and so bring him into vibration with all that is best, strongest, most desirable. You know, attention or concentration is probably the most important essential in the development of mind culture. You know, the possibilities of attention, when properly directed, are so startling that they would hardly appear credible to a person that hadn't been initiated in some form of advanced mindset understanding, such as this course. The cultivation of attention is the distinguishing characteristic of every successful man or woman, and is the very highest personal accomplishment which can ever be acquired. The power of attention can be more readily understood by comparing it with, say, a magnifying glass, in which we would take on a sunny day the rays of sunlight or focus. Now, you know they possess no particular strength as long as the glass is moved about and the rays directed from one place to another, as like we would shine on a wall. But let me tell you, if you hold that glass over a small fragment of wood and concentrate it and hold it perfectly still and let those rays focus through that glass on one spot for any length of time, the effect becomes readily and immediately apparent. So with the power of thought, then, let power be dissipated by scattering the thought from one object to another, and no result is ever apparent. And that's what most of us have done with our lives. We've let the power of our thoughts be dissipated by scattering and being so encompassed with the world without that they've scattered our thoughts from one object to another, and we're not getting any result. But let me suggest something to you. What if you focus the power through attention or concentration on any single purpose for any length of time? Let me tell you, at that point, nothing becomes impossible. You know, a very simple remedy for a very complex situation, some will say, all right, try it. For you that have had no experience in concentrating the thought on a definite purpose or object, I want you to choose any single object and concentrate your attention on it for a definite purpose for just say 10 minutes. I promise you, you cannot do it. The mind will wander a dozen times, and it'll be necessary to bring it back to the original purpose. And each time the effect will have been lost, and at the end of 10 minutes, nothing will have been gained. Because you've not been able to hold your thoughts steadily to the purpose. But it is, however, through attention that you will finally be able to overcome obstacles of any kind that appear in your path as we go onward and upward. And the only way to acquire this wonderful power is by practice. As I said, practice makes perfect. In this, as in anything else, whether it be what we do for a living or what our hobbies are, building models or whatever, practice makes perfect. Playing a game. You know, in order to cultivate the power of attention, I'm going to give you a little something to do. So write this down. Where you've been practicing control of your body, control of your mind, control of your spirit, control of all of those things, I want you to take a photograph of you into that same seat, in that same room, in the same positions as before. What I would like you to do is examine it closely at least 10 minutes. Now, when I say that, you may think I'm crazy, but what I really want you to do is examine that photo Note the expression of your eyes, the form of the features, the cheekbones, and the form of the face, the clothing, the way your hair is arranged. In fact, note every detail shown on the photograph carefully. Once you've done all that, I want you to cover it and close your eyes and try to see it mentally. If you can see every detail perfectly and can form a good mental image of the photograph, then you're to be congratulated. If not, repeat the process until you can. This step is simply for the purpose, if you would, of like preparing the soil. So as we move into lesson 7 tonight, we're going to begin to sow the seed. You know, it's by such exercises as these that you'll finally be able to control your mental moods, your attitude, your consciousness. You know, great bankers and financiers in our world today are learning to withdraw. If you notice, they're withdrawing from the multitude more and more. Like Bill Gates is moving aside, and though Steve is now passed away, but Steve was moving aside, and the great billionaires are moving aside so that they have more time for planning and thinking and generating the right mental moods for themselves. You know, successful businessmen are constantly demonstrating the fact that it pays to keep in touch with the thoughts of other successful businessmen. You know, a single idea may be worth $1 million. And these ideas can only come to those who are receptive, who are prepared to receive them, who are in a successful frame of mind. We're learning to place ourselves in harmony with the universal mind. We're thinking, well, let me just say it a different way. We're learning the unity of all things. We're learning the basic methods and principles of thinking. And this is changing conditions and multiplying results for us. We're finding that circumstances and environment are follow the trend of mental and spiritual progress. We find that growth follows knowledge. Action follows inspiration. Opportunity follows perception. Always the spiritual first, then the transformation into the infinite and illimitable possibilities of achievement. As the individual is but the channel for the differentiation, that's a long word for me, differentiation of the universal. These possibilities have to be then inexhaustible, and they are necessarily so. Thought is the process by which we may absorb the spirit of power and hold the result in our inner consciousness until it becomes a part of our ordinary consciousness. You know, the method of accomplishing this result by the persistent practice of a few fundamental principles, as I've explained in these lessons. That's the master key which unlocks the storehouse of universal truth. You know, the true great sources of human suffering at present are bodily disease and mental anxiety. Think of all the depression and all the mental anguish, and how that's all you see is how to take antidepressants or whatever. But I'll tell you what, if you take a close look at these things, they can be readily traced to some form of infringement on the natural law. This is no doubt owing to the fact that so far knowledge has largely remained partial. But the clouds of darkness which have accumulated through long ages are beginning to roll away, and with them many of the miseries that attend imperfect information. Larson, a great man, said that a man can change himself, improve himself, recreate himself, control his environment, and master his own destiny, is the conclusion of every mind who is wide awake to the power of right thought in constructive action. Very wise saying. So as we think about these things, let me leave you some questions. I'll try to go slow because I know some of you like to write these down. And I will tell you that it won't be necessary to write these down pretty soon. Claudio and myself are working on uploading all of the videos to YouTube. And we will have all of the questions for each lesson underneath the videos. And we will also be able to give you all of the appropriate answers to those questions below that, so that you can ponder the question and then see if you were correct. So the first question that I would leave you with in closing this lesson are, what are some of the effects which can be produced by electricity? You see, I want to see if you were paying attention. And upon what do these various effects depend? The next question is, what is the result of the action and interaction of the individual mind upon the universe that surrounds them? And how may those conditions be changed? What is this thing we call the mechanism? How may it be changed? Of what value is the power of concentration? And how may it be acquired? Why is it so important? What is changing conditions and multiplying results in the objective world? What is it? I'll leave you right there and say to you that I want you to take that picture and I want you to see for your own self the proof of how focused thought takes practice. That unless you have a photostatic mind, which you are capable of producing from within through practice, then you will finally begin to realize just how out of tune you are with the receiver. And once we get the tuner and the receiver aligned, the broadcast is 1,000,000 watts of power, reaching out in all directions to align us with the forces of the universe, so that the thought that we have can give us all that we desire. I'm Dr. David King. That's lesson 6 in The Winner Inside, Releasing the Invincible You.